We out of red in England. All aboard, yeah, you know it's Hype Train FC. Modern ambition, we got blue and gold in our kit. Plus, you know we the champs of the league. And we don't quit. Started from grassroots, yeah, the sport, we ain't taking it light. You know it's real. From fantasy to the field, you better believe the hype. Yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome back aboard the Hype Train Football Podcast. This will be our second edition and I'm pleased to have our very first interview segment. Today I've had a long sit down with Jordan Goodall, who's the manager at the Sandhurst Town team in the East Berkshire Football League. Jordan's a really nice guy, he's been involved in football, he's a young person, and what I was really leaning on with him today was talking about our experience in football as a young coach, developing, working through, having his team Sandhurst on the rise this past season, and we talk about the EBFL and alongside how to get coaches from day one to be a better version of themselves a few years down the line. It's a really intriguing talk, so I really hope that you enjoy our sit down with Jordan. Hi everyone, I am sat here with Jordan Goodall, the manager of Sandhurst. Is it Sandhurst Reds, Sandhurst Town?
It's going to be Sandhurst Men Reds next season, yeah.
Yeah, lovely. So basically, I'll pass over to Jordan just to give himself a little bit of an introduction and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jordan Goodall, manager of Sandhurst Men Reds, going into fifth year of men's football, sixth year of management. I'm 25, and yeah, obviously brilliant season last season with Sandhurst going into the East Berks Prem Division next season.
Lovely stuff. So we'll start by talking about your review from last season because all of my time that I knew Sandhurst when we were in the EBFL, you were fighting near the bottoms of the table. You know, you were getting tanked a few times and you generally were struggling. But last season, out of the two divisions in the East Berks League, you finished second. So just tell us about some of the highs of last season and how you ended up finishing second place.
There's a lot of highs. I mean, we could go on all day. But the boys last season definitely, not only for me and for the club, they impressed themselves. I think they were fantastic throughout the season. It was our most congested season last season, the most games we played throughout a competitive season. But for the boys last year, I thought that we had to sit down in the summer, and a lot of them wanted to really show what they were made of. I do have some quality players in the team, and we'd grown together for a few years. You know, the bond was there between them. I think all we needed was just the right click into place, and then that would be like in the right direction. So we sat down over the summer, and the boys wanted a bit more of an intense pre-season and really get themselves working from the off. So we did have a very, very strong pre-season. I think about 8 weeks of pre-season we had, really got going. We got some big names in, some big characters. And then, yeah, the season started. And I think, obviously, when we first went into men's football, the first competitive league game we played was actually against you guys.
Yeah, it was.
And we lost 4-0 against you. But since that year, the last 3 years opening days, we've actually won all of our games. We've been undefeated on our opening day. So went into the new season, got our first win of the season. And I think for the boys, what normally happens is we do have games, we do have periods in games where we switch off, we lose focus. And that was always what cost us, especially last season and like the season before and stuff. So this season, it was all about maintaining a game in the right manner when you're not the better team. And I think this season we did that very well. I think in periods I worked it out actually, we were behind in about 11 games this season, and we came back in 10 of them. So we were very good at coming back. Obviously, it's something we've got to build on. But the highs of last year, I mean, we won 10-0 last year. It was our second highest win under the men's football. First showcase game we played, unfortunately, lost that 1-0. 2 quarterfinals and a semi-final. And then obviously the final 4 games of the season in 10 days, getting 10 points out of 12, stopping Stoke Poachers, the champions, from an unbeaten season and getting automatic promotion. So
thank God you guys did that with Stoke Poachers. I couldn't imagine what those guys would have been like if they had gone invincible. That would have been tragic for me personally. So it's nice that you guys absolutely rolled them over on the return leg.
Yeah.
So obviously the upturn in form. When you started in 2019, the same time as us, has your squad developed internally, or have you had to rely on some recruitment outside, or is it a bit of both? So how many players kind of from the beginning do you have now that have developed with you?
So going back to that, I can actually remember the starting 14 versus you guys. I've got a very photographic memory. So the 14 that started back in 2019, I do still have 5 of those players playing for me, including my brother. I do have 2 extra that were in the starting 11 that are starting 14, sorry, that are still with the club. They just have taken a step back. They don't play very often anymore. They're more like step-in players when we are struggling with numbers. They do sign on each year, but you don't really expect them to play. In regards to the recruitment, I've done a lot going away from it because obviously Sandhurst is a club that starts from 4 years old all the way up to 18. So for me, I have looked around the under 17, under 18 mark. I've gone to a couple of their games. I've looked at like the players developing. Obviously the boys have mates outside of the club and in other football clubs, so I've gone to watch them. Quite a few of the signings we've actually had are from players that join us who then have extra mates that are looking, and then I bring them across. But the one thing that we've done very well this season in recruitment, it's very weird to hear this in Grassroots, is it's not just hear a player's name, sign them, blah, 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 and then it's almost like a shock to the system when you see them play. You don't really know what they're about. This season, I recruit with, as I said, with the 8 weeks process of pre-season, I brought players in to the squad, trained them, let them play in pre-season games, and then saw their development and how they fitted into the squad and what they brought. So very much this season, my recruitment was a bit different to what I've done in previous seasons. But the development of the players I've had from 2019 and maybe the year after, a couple more came in the year after that have been with me still. It's just developing them to understand how good of a player they are. They're all very good players. They're all very talented. They just needed confidence. They needed a bit of gel between the squad. And to be honest, it's all about the enjoyment for them. And you don't, like you said, first season we were getting trouted most weeks. There was a way that they could enjoy their football, even if they lost a game, by taking on the positives that they had in that game. And that's what we've done this season to go forward.
Okay, and just to make sure, if anybody isn't sure about like grassroots football culture, the way that players sign on and the way that it usually works is that at the bottom levels that we play at the East Berkshire League, you usually have to take what you're given. So, you know, you kind of have to like figure out jigsaw pieces based on what is available rather than what you want to have. Because, you know, grassroots football has a problem on Saturday football at the moment where players have such a broad range of things that they can do on their weekends. They sometimes prefer to play on Sunday mornings when it's more convenient for them and their families. It doesn't take too much time in the day. And Saturday football is conducive of being around at 2 p.m. every weekend. Yeah. So, you know, you tend to find that it's a lot of younger lads that don't have families, they don't have a lot of commitments on, that are really willing to make themselves committed. So, yeah, it's nice that you've been able to have that because we're going through that. And, you know, we'll have trial sessions where we may have 20 people turn up. And we'll probably have to sign them all on just to, you know, get a team out. And elements like that. So obviously with that, when do you think in your head that it all started to really click? Because there's a turning point in teams when you go through these processes and you go through the motions of trying to figure out what is best for you, and your intake and your turnaround was so quick. When do you think the pinpointed moment was when your team went from a team that could to a team that was?
Do you know what? I've been asked this question quite a lot by, you know, people on podcasts, people at committee meetings and stuff like that. For me, I could always, I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but even when we first went into men's football, I knew what type of players I had with me. I knew, you know, at the time there was a bit of a gulf in quality of some of the players I had. There were some very talented players. There were some players that were, you know, that needed a bit more developing and stuff. But I always could see like the bright, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. For me though, last season, so not the season that's just gone, the season before, we weren't we were always in games. There was always something that we could do in a game. We just needed that little bit of a spark and stuff. We brought in a couple of talented players, obviously a couple of mentions. Obviously my captain, Jack Kelly, who had a fantastic season this season. Obviously Liam, who's been with me since the start. They were making differences in games, and then it evolved around the whole squad. And for me, we played against some tough teams last season. I mean, Old Windsor had a very good season last season. We played them on the final day, and we took it to the wire. They beat us 2-1. But a couple of the players sat down with me after the season, and they weren't disheartened. Obviously, we finished, I think, just bottom half of the table last season. But they said to me, there's something there. We can definitely do something. And obviously have full belief in them. We signed a couple of players in the summer. And then one of our pre-season games, we had a very good pre-season, but one of our pre-season games just looked like it came at the wrong time. It looked like we'd just done far too much, and we just burnt ourselves out, and we just needed the season to come. And we were 3-0 down on a Wednesday night against Old Phoenix. And just a couple of mentions, names here, they'll love it. George Hone, who played in goal for us last season, my brother Bradley, Jack Kelly, and new signing Kyle Olive. They huddled in at half time, and don't get me wrong, I can lose my patience a little bit, and I was frustrated. I had a go at them. I said, listen, I've got work this evening. If you're going to play like the first half, I'm off. We'll call the game. We'll lose 3-0, and I'll go to work, and I'll get on with my evening. They huddled the team around those boys, and they kind of just said, no, listen, we know what we're about. Let's go out in the second half and just win the second half. And I said, no, it's not about winning the second half. I said, it's winning the whole game. I said, you can go and win this game 4-3. Now, I wouldn't just say that for the sake of it, but there was that slimmer, like, maybe that's a bit far-fetched, 45 minutes to go. We've not done something like that before. But in that second half, those players that I mentioned had a massive, massive impact. All 15 of them did, but those 5 players in particular just took the game by the scruff of its neck. Carl got a hat trick, Jacob got the other one, and we won 4-3. And that evening when I was on my way to work from Old Phoenix, I said, we can do things like that in games. We have a very, very strong chance this season. And that was the turning point for me, really, where I was like, okay, this is the right path we're on now.
Yeah, and I think if you ever start at a new football club, you're going to have to go through some development cycles where you're going to struggle. You're going to have a lot of teething issues. New football clubs they're not exempt. You can be in football for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you start a new football team, you're always going to have some form of a teething problem. And largely it's about finding that mix and that gel. And this is more like a broad thing for all football teams to consider. You will have that moment when it will just click in your head. You'll have one result that will just change everything in terms of the upward trajectory of your development. For us, when in our first year, we beat Cressex 5-2. It was one of the final games before COVID hit. And we lost our main forward, Leon. He left us for a little while. And, we had a bare 11. We had to bring in 2 or 3 people that were my friends to kind of like plug the gaps in. And we had a bare 11. We were in Div 2 at the time. Cressex were in the Prem. We went there expected to be absolutely steamrolled because we hadn't really got out of our rhythm. We had one good cup run in the Junior Cup at the time. That isn't around anymore. And we just went there and we were 3-0 up, I think, after like 15 minutes. And we'd scored 2 goal of the season contenders at the county FA level. And it just clicked. And then after that, you kind of like have that little bar that your squad internally has. And it means that at training sessions, they don't like to dip below it and they like to keep raising it. And it's good that you guys have got to that point. Because I was looking through some of your results. Obviously, you started the season with a 3-2 win over Bayliss, who were the eventual EBFL President's Cup champions, taken over from when we won it the year before. You then beat Etonwick 5-4 away from home, and you were 3-1 down. 3-1 down at half time.
Yeah.
And then you beat Stoke Poachers in a cup game as well, so you did beat them twice over the season. You then lost to the Old Windsor reserve team. You then beat Reading Tigers 4-1. You beat Frontline's reserve team 4-0. Then another 4-0 win over Braywood. 4-1 over Old Windsor Reserve. So you went from a 3-2 loss to a 4-1 win.
Yeah.
And then in the league, you beat Braywood 2-1. You lost narrowly against Cressix, who were a good team. Then lost to Bayliss, win against Eton Wick 6-1, and then the aforementioned 10-0 win over Reading Tigers. You can tell that it just takes that one pre-season, and then you get 8, 9 or 10 results that are conducive of you finishing up there. So in terms of your highlights from the season then, what do you think were the stand-up moments from your season just gone?
Well, we've just had our trophy presentation. Obviously, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I like to try and find little things and stuff. I compare them to other seasons. So I spent a lot of time making that presentation for the boys. A couple of crazy stats that I'll bring forward is this season we won double the amount of games that we have in our previous 3 combined. Goals wise, we scored 77 in all competitions this season, 1 less than we have in the 3 previous combined. We had 2 players this season hit double figures. We've never had a player hit double figures for us before. Kyle got 21 goals. I mean, we had 9 players in the top 25 leaderboard for assists this season. I think something that's very much, and I think you can definitely relate to it with Saturday grassroots football is the commitment level. You can always say you can have your best 11 and stuff, but Saturday league, Saturday afternoons when it's not, you're not getting paid, it's not a priority, you've got work and, got other family priorities and stuff. It's very difficult to get a squad together. And this year, for me, I was very lucky because a lot of people did ask me how the same sort of 15, 16 players were playing every week. And I said, well, it's down to the fact that they want to play. It's not me begging them. It's not me paying them. Listen, I haven't got that type of money. I wish I did. But it's the fact that I've and I like to take a bit of praise for myself there is, and the fact that I want to make it enjoyable for the boys as much as I enjoy it. I'm a very competitive person. I want to win everything like everyone does, but I want the boys to learn when they make a mistake. So, for example, Old Windsor, we lost 3-2. They came away from that and said, okay, well, we're not going to lose the reverse fixture. We'll beat them. And we did. Things like that. And I think they were very hungry this season to make things right. And I think the battle with Stoke Post this season, listen, I'll give the credit to Darren and Scott and Ryan Manton over there. That they're a fantastic squad. They're very well built this season. They, very tough opposition to have, tough rival to go up against. But I have to thank them because I think that they were definitely a squad that really pushed us to our limits as well to make us really enjoy the season we did. But the massive high for me, I think, like I said before, was, we did lose, but the showcase game, it's our first experience in a stadium, a semi-final, and a semi-final, bearing in mind, against the Prem champions Britwell, and we were leading 2-1 for the majority of the game with 12 men, including my dad, who's 52 years old, as a substitute. We lost our captain again, Jack Kelly, but he scored a goal of the season contender. I think that's a massive thing for the boys. Going up against a team like Britwell and going toe to toe with them. Britwell eventually did come out on top 5-2 winners in that last 15 minutes, but I have to say we were fantastic in games like that. And in games where we were the underdog, we wouldn't just roll over like we used to. We would really want to prove to teams that we're not just, a team on the pitch. We're there to go and win the game. And that's something that the boys have definitely taken on board this season.
Out of interest, did your dad end up playing in the game? Did he?
He did. He played 13 minutes against Britwell. He can. And the funny thing is he hasn't played much. Obviously, he's had some health scares over the last few years. But he played the year before against Hearts of Bracknell, the champions that season, and scored a goal of the season. And then this season, he's played against Britwell. He played minutes against Cressix. He's played some minutes against some big teams again this season. So hats off to him. He has, left it to me this, the last few years to run on my own. But he's always there to help and always an extra couple of legs when we do need an extra man on the pitch. So
you earlier you raised a really good point about consistency. So Just for the viewers at home right now, I'm going to put on the EBFL Division 1 table, and you'll see Stoke Poachers are finished in first place, then Sandhurst in second. Sandhurst, 14 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses. Stoke Poachers, 19 wins, 1 defeat. And then in third and fourth and fifth, you have Creswicks, Old Windsor and Frontline. And the point that I'm getting at is that consistency is the key here. You've mentioned that the consistency of players is what elevated you to that position. And Stoke Poachers equally, I know their squad have worked really hard to build on the foundations that they had with their current team. And every week it was the same group of lads every single weekend, coming together, really mucking in. And then below that, you've got Creswicks and Windsor, and I absolutely love both of their teams and their outfits. Creswicks are no nonsense; they get on with their football, but they do go through patches of inconsistency. Old Windsor reserves too, and then you have Bayliss and Frontline, who are all conducive of that. So, if you really want to be at the upper end of the tables, regardless of the division, you have to be consistent, and that's kind of a message to clubs. You don't get that sometimes in Saturday football, and this is kind of why. You need the stars to align once in a while, because you get teams like Poachers and yourself where you know who you're going to be playing every single time you go up against them. It's going to be the same group of lads and the same intensity, and you might be missing a few players, and that can ultimately decide titles, decide who gets the runners-up medals, and who's at the bottom of the table as well. Like Paul Reading Tigers at the bottom of the table. I know Jacob and a few of their lads in their team there. They're really well run, but they had 2 or 3 ACL injuries at the beginning of the season. And, we're talking here about big influences in the team, big players that would have been there, 18, 19-year-olds that are all of a sudden out for a year or 2 years through injury. And Berks Elite are the same, another academy team who finished second bottom, who, didn't have a goalkeeper for the majority of the season. So these little finite differences for Grassroots makes a difference. So it's a hard thing to achieve, but if there's any Saturday teams looking out there, what you ideally need to be striving for is consistency. We, last season in the Premier Division, finished third or fourth from bottom. We had to forego a couple of games at the end of the season, midweek games out to Slough that we just couldn't commit to because of work commitments. We would have finished a lot higher if we had have had the same players available every week, but we didn't get what we wanted to. We won the President's Cup because we had the same squad virtually from the quarterfinals onwards. We had the same back four played for virtually the entire tournament, the same goalkeeper that came in towards the latter end of the tournament as well, Jamie. We always had the team for the cup games, but in the league games, it was trying to get a team together regardless of who it was. So, when we'd be playing Old Windsor or Sing Saba at home and we don't have our 2 top goal scorers or our university graduates who are on placement schemes who are away for the week, it just meant that we struggled every single time. So that's kind of a thing to mention and look out for teams that are looking to finish higher up. You have to be consistent, regardless of that. So we'll move on, because obviously Sandhurst's season was fantastic, and I want to talk more interpersonally about yourself. So you started when you were in your early 20s.
19 was
19,
my first.
sorry. God, because I thought I was young starting a football team at 28, and then you've got a 19-year-old across the road who's getting into it. So talk a little bit about your journey from, not from when you were 19 to now, and what got you into football, what got you into where you are now at Sandhurst.
Football is, I live and breathe football. Like, when you say, like, what's your hobbies and stuff, it's literally my life. Like, football is everything. Obviously I'm a football fan, I'm a football player, football manager, everything to do with football I've done. Obviously support Liverpool. I'll bring that into point. Some people can say this year, they can laugh, but obviously we'll see what happens next season.
Hey, I'm a Newcastle fan. I'm happy you guys had it down here.
Fair play to Newcastle. They did very well this season. But so Liverpool. But from a young age, I was always encouraged to play football. Listen, I was quite a very good player when I was younger. I was in academies. I got into Charlton's academy, Barnett's academy. I was very lucky to be as fit as I was, and I wasn't picking up injuries that young lads do pick up. Knee injuries and ankle injuries. I had a year where it did all kind of like fall apart. I broke my ribs in a cup semi-final, and then I also got severs, which is an ankle injury. So that was my the toughest year I've had as a player. I love playing. It's something I've always enjoyed doing. But I've always had an knack for like different parts of it. So I like to analyse football. So like commentary, I can talk for England, as a lot of people say. So as people thought I might have gone down that route. I've got my refereeing badges if I wanted to be a referee or a linesman. I've done things like that as well. But coaching was what my dad's always done. My dad has coached my teams in previous years. He started this team that my brother plays for, this team, when they were 13, 14. But my dad is one of those will want to try and help wherever he can, and he just took on too much of a workload for football. So at the time I was 18, I kind of like was going to the games. I was helping where I could. I'd either referee or run the line, or even if my dad wasn't there, I would take over a game and stuff. And I remember this team were it was full of lads that had never really played football, that just wanted to kick the ball around. And they got their first ever win when I was managing them away at Yateley. We beat second place Yateley 3-1. And I've never felt so much emotion for a team that I didn't have much of a connection with, other than it was my brother was playing for them, that I thought, this is incredible. Like, what I had done, I hadn't done much. I'd literally put a team out and they had done that. But I thought, oh, this is something I'd really like to try. So when I first came into men's football, it was like my first proper real year. And I tell you, it was a very tough like thing to do. Like, I had a group of lads that at the time it's difficult because my brother plays for the team. All of his mates, they're like, well, it's Bradley's brother. Why should we listen to him? So it's very difficult to get the respect at times. They wanted to try and show off and everything in men's football, and obviously that's not how it is in men's football. It's a lot tougher to do. But for me, growing, I think, especially over the years, I've taken a lot of negatives. I take a lot of criticism, and because I'm young, I have had people come up to me and say things like, this, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right. I'm never going to, swipe at someone and say, listen, I don't care what you say, because a lot of people have been in it a lot longer than I have. So I've definitely taken a lot of criticism on board. I even take the players' points. They're the ones that I care about most. They're the ones that I'm trying to do this for. When things don't go right for them, and they come to me and they speak to me privately, or they message me and stuff and say, this is not working, or this, I will always take it on board, and I always go back to myself and look at what things I can do to include or improve that. And I think over the last few years, I've grown in confidence in what I can do. I've become stricter with them. They don't get away with a lot more. There's a fine list. We have a fine list for Saturday League football.
Oh, God.
It goes to a good cause. It goes to It goes to end of season dues and Christmas dues and stuff like that. But the boys agreed that it was a good idea. And then the respect started to show. They respect me a lot more. They understand that I give up a lot of my time to do this for them. And I think that's why this season the intensity levels of training, the commitment levels, there was less back chat. There was more getting on with it, working hard for themselves, not just for me. And I think something that I always say and give out to a manager is there are going to be bad days. It's like work. You're always going to have bad days, but the good days will shadow over the bad days. And I've always said that you can have incredible days as a football manager. When you get automatic promotion, you win a league, you win a cup, you get to a cup final. Those days will make you want to do it more than, a bad result. And if you lose a game, you'll always be disheartened. I'm one of the worst. You don't want to talk to me after we've lost the game on a Saturday afternoon, but I'm always looking at the points that I can take away from the game that we can then improve, that when we play that team again, we can make it right and beat those teams.
So one thing that you mentioned that I thought was really good is about the development of your communication and when I started, in our very first game, we had my assistant at the time, Rod, said, yeah, I'll do all the team talks. I'll do a lot of this work. And when it comes to shove, when we're in the changing room and I've given him the whiteboard, he said, no, you do it. And, new managers can sometimes get a little bit alarmed about speaking in front of big groups of players, having their thoughts communicated, especially when you're younger as well, in like you're dealing with a lot of older players sometimes as well, because my team is a little bit different from Sandhurst, and a lot of teams will go through this where you tend to find that there's more people older than you than there is younger than you. So I don't know if it's the same at Sandhurst, because it seems to be you guys are growing together with the same type of age. So but typically when I play, and my experiences have been more aligned to, you deal with a lot of older people that have such assured opinions about football and how it should be played. And you come in with this team called Hype Train, who were like, people compare us to hashtag or SE Dons, or teams just want to be popular on YouTube. And you go in and start talking and they just do not listen. And especially when you start, you're not as confident as what you think. You do a team talk, and Sam, my brother, has filmed every single team talk I've ever done, and the levels of confidence that a manager goes through from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, it's unreal how much more calm and how much you speak with clarity and decisiveness when you have that experience under your belts. So what do you think from day 1 to year 5 have been your biggest improvements in that regards, with an eye to kind of leaning on a new manager that wants to get into football, what they'll go through and their teething pains and how they get better at it? I think the most important thing for me is you've got to have a squad that you can have control of, not in the sense that you tell them what to do kind of thing. What I mean is when you're speaking, they will take those things on board. They're not going to ignore you. They're not going to you're going to have that with any squad, really. Any squad, everyone has an opinion. Football is full of opinions, full of different assumptions and stuff. What you have to do is you have to be, for me, I've always said, I have to just take everything with a pinch of salt. Anyone can come to me and say something. Some things I will let go in one ear and out the other. Some things I will take on board and I will go, okay, that's something that I can prove. I mean, my dad is one that is very much my biggest critic. He comes to a lot of games. He will tell me when I've done something wrong, especially when we're losing at half time. That small period of time that I can get a message across sometimes can be very emotional. I can be, quite heated with them and stuff. But then those situations when I have been heated and they know I'm upset with what's going on, they've gone out and made the difference and they've changed the game and won the game. So for me, it's all about just maintaining the way that you want to communicate with a team. You don't ever do the same things that other people do. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own skills and their own specialities in the way that they cope with a team. You just need to be able to build the trust and build the respect with a squad. But also remember that as a coach, it's about the players. You've got to understand that the players are the ones that are out there on the pitch. They're the ones going to make the difference. You need to know what they want. Doesn't mean you have to make every change for their satisfaction, because I'll tell you what, I've had games where the boys, I have 4 different formations chucked at me and they want it to change to a 5-back. They want to change to a 3-back. Don't be put under pressure to do that. I have, and I'll admit that I've been under pressure at times and I've flicked and made a change of formation and it's gone wrong. You need to stick to your guns, but take on the input that people give you and use that to your advantage going forward, in my opinion. Of course. And so one thing that new managers always so I did my first podcast and it was more like a presentation about the do's and don'ts of new management. And the one thing I heavily lean on is the way that new managers come into football and have this little box of viewpoints that they have that are certain and they are unwilling to change. We had a trial manager, I won't name him out of respect because he's a nice lad, but he came in and said, this is how I want to play and this is how I want to do things and this is how I envision things and this is how I predict us to win things. And it was all centric on what the manager wanted, before he even knew the players. He didn't even know the players that were going to be playing for us, but kept saying I, and I. So what we found was that the players just did not listen to him because he didn't take the players' points of view into consideration. So he would set up a drill and he would stop and talk about it for minutes. He wouldn't get the players engaged and involved, and he never listened to player feedback. He basically left that all to me for the players to just moan in my ear saying, this guy isn't listening, he doesn't know what he's doing with us, he doesn't want to do anything that we want to do, to the point that there was a big breakdown of communication where he would say things and you could see the players were thinking about what they wanted to eat for dinner in the evening, and everything. So I would advise new managers to, first of all, do less talking and learn your craft. Have you done your
team?
Yeah, exactly. Learn the team. Have you done your FA level 1 and 2, or have you done any of your coaching badges yet?
So that's my process. This, obviously, a lot of people have asked me like what my goal is in 5 years and stuff like that. I've found my place now. Like, I love playing football. I don't get me wrong, I still play on a Sunday. But Saturday league football and the last few years have been massive for me. I give up Liverpool most of it sometimes to go to do what I do. And I think for me, this is what I want to do in 5 years' time. This is where I want to see myself. I want to make it however high I can. I'm currently in the process of doing all of my coaching badges. So I've done my level 1. I'm going on to my level 2. And then hopefully by the end of next season, I will be in the process of my level 3. And that's where I really want to step going. So obviously, at the moment, my focus and my full focus is the following season with Sandhurst. I've committed to them. I've said to them that we are going to be in the Premier Division next season, which we'll touch on in a moment. But like, that's the process that I'm in at the moment. Obviously, I've done my level 1. My level 2 is fastly on the horizon. Level 3 is the next focus once my season with Sandhurst is over next season. And then my thought process will go into where I'll be.
Yeah. So just a little bit of so what would you advise new coaches to do the level 1 badge? Because there's a stigma online that the FA level 1 badge is just a bit of a money maker. You pay a bit of money and you do a course. But would you advise new managers? Because the managers that I've got at grassroots level, you tend to get people that have never done it before. Yeah. And they don't really know how, they don't know how the sausage is made as such. And what I would advise is to get them onto the FA level 1 so they understand football at this level. Would you make recommendations for people to do their level 1?
Yeah, and I tell you what, the level 1, and I completely agree with you. Level 1, when you start it feels as though you are. It's almost at the start you think, this is a bit silly. Like, I know all of this stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory. When you take over a football club, unless you really don't have it, you pretty much know the basics of how to run a club. You know what you need to do, stuff like that. And level 1 pretty much tells you that. But the thing that I found very interesting with level 1 is there are very simple things that are overlooked by managers, and these FA like coaches will tell you that. And I tell you what, there was a drill that they did, a very easy drill. I mean, very basic, but I'd never done it before. I just overlooked it. My boys are adults. I didn't think they'd enjoy it. And it was how to score a goal. 5 different ways you score a goal. But I implemented it into a training session. I'll tell you what, it was fantastic. The boys, it became a bit more of a competitive game. It wasn't just towards the end where they're running around just trying to boot the ball in the back of the net. It's different situations, different scenarios they're in an actual game. Level 1 is very much something that I think managers and coaches that want to do this should take on. I think there are very important factors to it that do come into place when you do the level 1 course.
So currently I'm actually doing my level 1 course right now. The FA actually funded my whole this £160 or £100 on sometimes when at some points of the year, but the FA actually funded me to do it because I'll be running some women's sessions upcoming to try to get people involved in football in Reading that haven't had the opportunity to play. So they gave me the course, and I've been running the team as long as you have, Jordan. And I think that we can both nod in agreement that even after 4 or 5 years, you can learn even some new basics. So the structure, in case you don't know what the FA Level 1 is, it's all online. So it's more like an online university where you just have to do 5 or 6 modules. You have to attend some webinars on a Friday evening. And the first webinar was talking a lot about how to get players engaged at training sessions. The second one was very similar, more ideas about how to engage. And I think what you talked about 5 different ways was a fox in the box drill, where you've got can you score with just one pass? Can you score with a right foot, a header, or a volley? Just to mix it up. Can you score with everybody getting an assist or touching the ball? And little elements like that I hadn't even considered after 4 years, and now I've got some takeaway from it. And on top of that, it gives you the opportunity to do your first aid course, which is imperative, and your safeguarding course as well. And safeguarding will be mandatory for all clubs from the 24-25 season. So everyone over the next year will have to do some form of a safeguarding course involved at a grassroots club. So my advice would be to get it done, because you learn so much about the basics. And managers that have never done it before, that have reached out to me, that want to take training sessions, turn up and they put 17 players, and this is genuinely one of the training sessions I had, our very first trial manager put 17 of us into a rondo, left the rondo going for half an hour, whilst him and the forward Leon, who scored against you,
we know,
who's already a very good player,
they
just did shooting practice with a goalkeeper. So 3 of them doing shooting practice, and all he was doing was taking shots at a goalkeeper for 40 minutes, whilst poor 17 of us are just in 2 lots of rondos, like non-stop, with no communication. And, and we're just there. Like I run the club and I wanted to go home. I was like, this is not on, he doesn't, and he's just having a laugh with one of our forwards, and oh my God, it was just unreal. The lack of detail and care to attention for the broader squad, and what you get from the FA Level 1, even if it is a bit of an easy way for the FA to make money, you learn some cognizant skills as a day one manager about how to approach football, about the basics of how to keep your players engaged. And because from a day one manager, I don't think you should do drills. I don't think you should do too much, especially when you're dealing with younger people as well. Get them playing football in different ways. Do condition games, do lots of different scenarios, because then the ball's still rolling. Players want to get touches in at training, and everything from there. So if anyone is listening that wants to become a manager, I would say I waited 3 years too long to do mine. I should have done mine in 2019, but I waited because I thought I knew better. And then I did my FA Level 1 and I'm like, oh God, I'm an idiot. So but it's never too late, and I would always learn people to do it. And Level 2 is a whole different kettle of fish, because you have to do assessments with you have to go out to your local county FA. For us, we're part of the Berks and Bucks FA, so we'd have to go out to Aylesbury or wherever they host it, usually on a 4G pitch. They'll set up a whole day for you to do some training courses with members on site. So it's a slightly different, more advanced course. And I'll talk about that in a later podcast, because I haven't done mine yet, but that's something that I will do eventually. So that's really good. And, it's always good to hear from younger managers in particular. We will change gears, though, for the final part and talk about the East Berkshire Football League. For people that are outside of the area, the football landscape on Saturdays in the Berkshire region we're all under the umbrella of the Berks and Bucks FA, which is the local county FA. What we have is that there's one predominant league, the Thames Valley Premier League at grassroots level, which is a feeder club to a Step 6 league. So the way that the football pyramid works, you've got the Premier League, Championship, all the way down to like the regional conference leagues, and then you go into the Step 6 leagues, which are feeder leagues up into the Greater Pyramid. So we're part of the base of the pyramid, where the Thames Valley League is one league, and then you have the East Berks League, which is predominantly teams from Slough, but moreover now you get more teams coming in from the west, because the Thames Valley League is at capacity every year. So it's becoming a bit of more of a hybrid league, and Jordan's aforementioned Sandhurst have been in Division 1. last season, and the league I think is growing next year to 28, maybe 30 clubs. The new committee that have coming in are doing a very good job at attracting teams, attracting local football back to the area. Just from your point of view, did you think that at some point the league was going to die? Do you think that it was on the way out?
Yeah, and on an honest opinion, I did. I thought when we came in at the start, we grew relationships with teams like yourself, Stoke Poges. We had relationships with these types of teams, and a lot of them, you know, like yourselves, either left or there was issues with the league and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I think the Sparks, it's very difficult to keep everyone happy, and that's the one thing I'll always say, that respect to them as a committee. It's very difficult to keep every team happy. There's always going to be a problem somewhere. But yeah, the more and more teams that were going each year. I mean, 2 years ago we were in a development league with 6 teams. It was like, you know, it at that time I thought, where does it go from here? But I think what they've done in the last 12 months has been fantastic. I think the thing with East Sparks is brilliant. You know, we do something that a lot of grassroots football doesn't do, where a lot of the football clubs have social media, so you can keep it in tabs with, like myself, your team Hype Train on YouTube, Instagram, and East Sparks are very, very good with social media aspects, and also with the showcase games, which gives, you know, young lads and men opportunities to play in stadiums and stuff, which I think is fantastic.
So let's talk about the showcase games for a little minute, because this is something that I don't think many grassroots leagues do at all. I've been scouring to see if other teams do these type of events, and it's few and far between. You might get like a special game here or a special game there, but the East Berkshire League, their biggest selling point in terms of attraction is that they, for people that don't know, they host these games at small grounds in the area. They usually host games at Ascot United or Burnham FC, and there's a few other grounds that they dot it around, Slough Town occasionally, that they host these games at, where they give normal grassroots players an opportunity to play at a small ground for a day. And, you know, they do a lot of media attention around it, and, you know, they roll out the red carpet for grassroots clubs to give them a taste of what it's going to be like at the, you know, what it could be, especially when you go to a cup final as well. Our first time was the cup final. We hadn't played in a showcase game before that. We went out to Burnham and played Cressex. We had never been in an environment where we had played in a small ground before, and it was just, it's very different. If you've never been in that environment before, you have a certain nervous tickle that goes down your throat.
Yeah.
Especially for evening games. We played our game in the middle of May when it was 32 degrees. So it was a physical heat. We had just got in our new white kit, that's behind us there, and I didn't wash it. So we got it the same morning of the cup final. And the kit in the heat was so starchy. Everybody's nipples were on fire, and everything, because, you know, we didn't have time to wash it, and we had already committed to wearing it, and it was but it's a very surreal environment. So talk about your experience, because you know, you wore the suit at the game.
That's been brought up a lot.
So talk about your experience.
I mean, like you said, East Sparks, they do a very good job about it. It's everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It got to the point where I was getting, you know, it sounds silly, but I was literally going to the local shops and people were asking me about it, because I'm quite a recognised face in Sandhurst. But people were just saying, "Oh, what's this game about?" and everything like that. Obviously, ours was a title game between Stoke Poges in March. Much less weather conditions. It was pouring with rain on the day. But it just, for the boys, it's, you know, for my lads, it was a big experience for them. Some of them have never played at something like this, you know, like in a stadium condition and stuff. The suit, in regards, I just thought, to be honest, a lot, you know, people did say it was, you know, good idea and stuff. I just thought I wanted to dress to impress a little bit. You know, I knew it was going to be cameras and stuff like that. So that was what the suit was. It was very difficult because the suit got soaked. But yeah, it was a very good game. But the thing is everything does go out the window, in my opinion, in a showcase game, because you want to impress the people there. Obviously, you know, tickets on the door. I think we had about 250 or something. It might be a bit less like people in capacity. But the amount of people that turned up on a Saturday evening when they'd rather be down the pub kind of thing in the pouring rain was fantastic for the boys and fantastic for both ourselves and Stoke Poges. Obviously, we lost 1-0, but it was a very, very good game. We just had unfortunate injuries in the game. But it's something definitely that, as a coach, you look forward to. It's a very big occasion.
And so with the EBFL, what do you think they have been doing right aside from that? Like, where do you think their positives are? Because for people that don't know, the league is kind of at the whim of the footballing world around it. They have a lot of teams that occasionally get poached. It's a very vulnerable league where teams join and then teams leave because they usually get picked up by other leagues. So they're always in like a precarious state, in my point of view, because it's harder to retain Saturday football than it is for Sundays, which is why on Sundays you get larger divisions or more teams enter. So where do you see the EBFL going right, especially in the last 12 months? Like, what do you see as their improvements?
I think for me, especially as a manager speaking with the committee, I think they take more into consideration now. So they know what, they want to know what teams want from the league. I think they bring, as I said, the showcase and the media side of things is an aspect that not many leagues do. So that is something that they definitely hold very well compared to other leagues. That gives the boys and all players in the grassroots football an opportunity to be noticed, to be shown on YouTube and Instagram, Twitter. But I think this year, definitely, for me, like I've grown to know the committee members and the league of secretaries and everything over the years. But if you'd asked me in 2019, I wouldn't even have had a clue. I would only have known yourself. Now I know everyone. Like you see a lot more faces at games. You see a lot more faces at meetings. You get more interaction with them on the phone. They take things into considerations. They listen. As I said before, nothing's going to be perfect with football. There's always going to be issues, but the fact that they try and make things happen and try and make things right makes it more appealing for clubs than it would be as if they go, yeah, okay, whatever, and brushed it under the carpet, which I will admit in previous years they had done. Nowadays, they definitely take into consideration the teams, that are in the league's position and what they need and what they're asking for. And that's something for me that I think has definitely brought my respect to them, because again, what I said, it's not a paid job. They do this off their own back to keep a football league running, to keep all these players playing football. There are going to be mistakes. They're not professionals, and I think they deserve a bit of respect for especially the things they've done this year.
So where do you think, that's a good question, where do you think clubs go wrong in regards to their treatment of leagues? Is it the fact that they don't know what do you think that they don't know what goes on? Do you think that there's a bit of an education gap, like what you said, going in from day one, not knowing anything? Like, where do you think clubs harbour this attitude from occasionally when they get frustrated and they take it out?
It's difficult because I've asked my boys before. Like I've spoken with my lads. They were very shocked at how much I have to do behind closed doors. They think. And some people do. Some people think, a coach turns up on a Tuesday and a Saturday, brings the footballs, brings some bibs, puts a kit on, you play. It's far more fetched there. And that's the one thing I have to say as a coach. If you're going to be like that, it's not the right thing to be doing. I think what you want to be doing is you've got to give up a lot of time to go to meetings like these, like committee meetings and these league meetings. I do think some teams just think it's just going to be handed on a platter to them. Unfortunately, where you are near the bottom of the footballing grid, you're not going to have people that are going to, attend to all your needs. Whereas, like in higher divisions, they will. But I think what you've got to do is you've also got to show some respect to these people that do give up their time. At the end of the day, I think there are situations that just can't be resolved. There will be issues that happen, and you're frustrated by them, but there's ways and stuff around it rather than just throwing your toys out the pram. Sorry. So it is difficult in that scenario of kind of like saying, where things go wrong. I just think some people don't understand how much goes on behind closed doors to keep these leagues running and to keep these clubs running. But like, especially like situations like, for example, we had a game that was postponed. It's not down to the league. It goes across to all different factors and different things that got to be investigated through it. So there are situations where I kind of have to bite my tongue a little bit and say, listen, okay, I'll let them deal with it and let them get to the bottom of it. But yeah, I think that is the most important thing as a coach. You've got to remember that the amount you do for a club is the amount the committee members do for a league and more. So you have to respect that as much as you want the players to respect what you do for the club.
So just out of interest, so in my situation, I'm the club secretary and the manager. So that means that I do all of the back admin as well as all of the front end coaching as well. Is that similar with your situation? Do you manage everything, or do you have a secretary that will manage complaints? Because some clubs may have different structures. You may have some managers that purely manage and then they leave all the admin to somebody in the background. Or you have situations where you have football clubs that one person or two people do it all. So what do you do? Is that kind of yours?
Obviously, when we went into men's football, Sandhurst isn't something that goes into men's football. You know, it is for boys and girls all the way up to the age of 18. And then normally it stops there. Obviously, I took it into men's football. It was something that Sandhurst weren't familiar with. They weren't, and I'm not gonna say anything bad about it, but there wasn't a lot of support because obviously they thought we were doing it on our own kind of thing. Recently, a chairman's come in. He definitely deserves the credit due what he's done for us. He's supported us in a lot of aspects. For myself, I have my, as they say, the fingers in the pies. I do tend to deal with everything involved in managing. So the admin side of things, I'm always involved in complaints. So even though like the chairman or like anyone involved with the Sandhurst Football Club will get an email about it, it always comes to me and they'll always have my say in it as well. So I definitely do more than just the management side of things. Obviously, I have my dad in the background that does help as well. But most of it is left to me. It's just they're there for my help and support if I need them.
And that's a big point. If you want to go into management or if you want to kind of get involved in football, you have to really understand your environment. And I think this is where a lot of these issues come up. You get a lot of people looking inward. I haven't gone to an AGM. An AGM, for people that don't know, is an annual general meeting. We actually have ours for the EBFL later this evening, where you talk through the new constitution, you approve in a new committee if there's any changes. So you just kind of go through basically the rules and the conduct, and they set the scene for the season ahead. So you just turn up into a meeting room. Ours is at Burnham FC later, so one of the small grounds that we go to, and they go through changes and addendums and new committees and everything else to do with the running of the league, basically. And they're quite formal events. It's going to be very hot later. I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I've got some giant light shining on me, so I feel about 50 degrees now.
Yeah.
But yeah, but they're usually fun events. But yeah, like the teams that are new, and I'm not knocking anyone here because it's part of the learning curve that you go through. You go in all hammer and tongue about your needs and your expectations, and you laid it out perfectly earlier, saying that people are just very narrow-minded when they don't know any differently. Because the amount of clubs that go in and say, I should only be in Division 1. I don't want to be in the Premier Division. I need to start lower. So you get 4 or 5 people that will only speak to the committee about their own point of view. And you've got a lot of other people that have been around there for a long time going, oh my God, shut up. Like internally, they're like, calm down. We're all here. We've been through this process, but you need to go through that sometimes as a club, because it's so many confused faces. So you get some people that have been there for 10 years with one opinion, and then you get new people coming in who were just learning everything, and they're acting how you did 9 years ago. And you're like, God, was I that bad? And everything. And these poor committees sometimes have to glue everything together. So they do. I mean, Gary Reeves, I'm surprised he's got grey hair, and I wonder if he got the greys from running the EBFL. And before that, he had long golden locks flowing down his head. But it's similar to dealing with a football club. You just deal with the administration instead of it, and they do have a hard job. The one thing that, if I'm going to take a step back about where the EBFL is going right, the major difference is across grassroots football, the way that leagues operate. I don't want to demean, but you tend to find that you get dinosaurs running a lot of leagues, a lot of older people that will stick to the FA rules very, very strictly. And it's not saying that we're ragtag and rogue and looking to change the laws, but they're very proper to the rules. So they'll meet at quarterly committee meetings. So you could send them an email in March, but it won't be reviewed until July or August. So the communication patterns for leagues nowadays can be very slow depending on who's running it. You won't typically find younger people running committees because it's a volunteer thing. And you do find that a lot of retired people that are involved in football will do this as as like an extracurricular because they've got nothing but free time on their hands. So, you know, for ourselves, Jordan, you're 25, 26, I'm 32. You're not going to find many people that will have that many hours in the day to help commit to a football league. So you do find that some of the people involved can be archaic in age. Some of them are very nice and have very progressive thoughts, but they're very formal with their communication. And from our experience, we've applied to the Thames Valley League in years past and literally heard nothing for months and months and months and months. You email the Hellenic League and the Combined Counties League are very similar in stature with the way that they operate. So the EBFL is different because there tends to be people on hand that are always available to talk to. And it's a very weird thing because you're so used to having a lack of communication. In our Sunday league, in the Reading Sunday League, we competed there last season, and there's about maybe 40, 50, 60 teams. There's 5 divisions of 13 teams. Typically, there's a lot going on. And sometimes when you have that amount of volume of teams, sometimes you don't hear back for months, and you know, it can be very slow, and that can grate and grind at your mental state when you're dealing with a pressing issue, such as one of my players has been smacked in the face and he's got 2 teeth missing, and we reported it to the county FA and everything, and it just nothing happens for so long. So this is the one big learning curve that you have to understand if undertaking a position in management. It doesn't happen quickly. You want everything to happen so quickly. You want everything just to be buried so you can forget about it and move on. In football, my experience is that doesn't happen. It tends to drag on longer than what you need it to. So I don't know. It's an interesting one with football teams and the way that they're going. But my point was that the EBFL, compared to other football leagues, has a very good communication base.
Yeah,
they've got a WhatsApp group with all of the clubs. They speak with everybody if there's ever any issues. They're hot under the collar with actually understanding issues that goes on. Whether or not they can do anything about it is another case, but they're very good at actually picking up the basis of it and at least attending to it, even if they don't know what to do. And football clubs tend to think that the league has all the answers. The formal process is that sometimes if there's a big dispute, such as what you had, was it the Braywood game that you had? Was it the Braywood game? So Jordan's case here was basically was it an abandoned game?
So the referee actually just walked off the pitch. Obviously, the game continued with a standing referee, but the referee that was issued to us, he actually had an argument with a Braywood substitute who he sent off, but then a comment was made which then meant the Braywood player lost his temper, and the referee then decided to just walk off the pitch. Obviously, this is something that the East Berks are very good for. We're chasing down automatic promotion. I tried to get in touch with a committee member who fantastically answered the phone in the middle of a day, like a football day where he might be at another game. And he, gave me the right kind of structure of what to do. So the game was able to be played out, which we then won 4-3. At the time the referee walked off, it was 3-3, 4-3, massive 3 points for us. But then it went, obviously, where the league then took it into consideration. It's not just down to the league, as like you were saying, Rob. It goes up to different sections and different parts of the FA who have to deal with the investigation. But that's a massive point there where the East Berks have definitely helped, where in that scenario, I'd never had that before. Like, what do you do? Does the game just get abandoned? Do we have to walk off? But both teams wanted to play the game on. And that's where the sparks were very helpful and helped us allow us to finish a game.
And we learned firsthand. We had an incident in one of our Sunday League games where the team that we were playing, pretty much, they didn't confirm if they had a referee or not. And in Sunday League, it's a bit different. At the lower levels, there's not enough referees, and sometimes you have to get your own refs in. And we were told by this team that, you know, there was a referee in place, and come the game day, there wasn't, and he didn't show up. Whether or not they cancelled him, we don't know. But we had a decision where we had to play the game with the referee. The referee ended up being the opposition manager, and we had less than 1 minute to make a decision because he was trying to get the game going ahead ASAP. So in the moment, I was spinning in circles because I had no idea what to do, because you're supposed to give ample time to the opposing team about, you know, what you want to do, and you're getting loads of people pressing you, like forcing you, oh my God, what are we going to do? And, you know, there's actually rules in place about if you don't continue the game. So if we had said, no, we're not playing the game, there's actually rules in place that you, even though you don't play the game, you forfeit the points. So in that instance, if both of the teams walked away, the game would have probably been voided and it would have been gone through as a no result. And there's a misconception in football that if you decide to walk away, the game can get rearranged. What typically happens is that you actually get penalised, and clubs are actually told, no, you've got you had to play it if they had anyone that could referee it. And then on top of that, we give them the judicial powers as a normal referee to make whatever decisions, even though it's an opposing manager who ultimately ended up cheating his arse off throughout the game and everything. But, you know, so you have these situations in football where it's not nice, and, you know, you deal with people that can be a bit prickly around the edges. They're nice people largely, but you just have to deal with a few moments. Moments, I think, is the best word to put it. You just deal with moments that you have to get over, and sometimes it can be a mental hurdle when you're dealing with a lot of admin to the leagues. And in Jordan's case, and if you don't know how the process works, you send a complaint to the league, or you send like a report with some evidence, and then what will typically happen is that it will go to the county FA, who are basically the supervisors of everyone, and then they will do a formal investigation. And these investigations, as you know, because your situation happened 6 months ago and it still hasn't been resolved today. So yeah, it can take time. Football takes its sweet time to make its mark felt nowadays, as well. And next season, I don't know if you've had a look. What do you make of the new points deduction rules? Because that will go straight to the county FA. Yeah,
I think that's something that obviously managers, like you said, like we've been speaking about with managers coming in to manage football clubs, definitely need to look at. Obviously, with a football game, it's not just turning up on a Saturday playing your game. Obviously, you need to have a team sheet of players that are signed onto the full-time league. So, for example, it's Berkshire League. You can go on searching my football club, for example, Sandhurst, and you'll have a list of my players. And obviously, those players will need to link to my team sheets. Team sheets have been a massive issue over the last few years because obviously it's gone from the paper, which I still use, to the on the phone kind of thing. So like
the electronic.
That's it. Yeah, electronic.
Yeah. I actually made that for the league. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's where things have got a little bit complicated because people will just send electronic any time of the day. So not like I do, where I hand it before kickoff. I sometimes get electronic team sheets at Sunday 4:00, which is 24 hours after the game's finished. So that's where I think the issue has lied. In regards to points deduction, I think that's going to be a big step forward in regards to how that's going to help teams be a bit more strict with their team sheets and strict with the way that they turn up to games and prepare for games. And I think that's something that definitely needs to be it's definitely needed to be sorted, and I think that's a good step forward. But obviously, teams have got to look at it a bit more, look into the process of how that's going to work and stuff.
So just to go into some of that process a little bit, the FA basically have released a misconduct guide, and the points deductions purely relate to continued aggression and misconduct in football matches, and they released what is their version of misconduct. So, for example, if I was playing against you, Jordan, and I just walloped you in the face, that's technically misconduct. And if that happens on a repeated occasion, so if it happens a second time, so the second instance could be you're just screaming at the referee for 10 minutes straight, showing no respect, or if I'm on the side or you're on the side and we're just absolutely hammering away, showing no regard for the game, then that can go down as misconduct as well. And the county FA, I don't know how they're going to manage this, but they are going to have to, they're the guys that hold the keys to the kingdom of who gets these points deductions. So what you will have to do as a club is supply a lot of evidence to support your claims about these aggravated breaches. It might have to be phone recordings. Our club has a video camera, so we probably have our bases covered because it films the whole pitch. But on top of that, clubs are going to have to become a lot more savvy with getting evidence if they really want to put forward these misconduct claims. And I think it's a good idea. I think they should have started maybe in the Premier League, handing out suspensions for players and managers that show aggravated breaches. I know you're a Liverpool fan, Jordan. Jurgen Klopp loves a potty mouth on the sideline with referees. Pep does it. Arteta does it. Jason Tindall at Newcastle is constantly in the referee's ear, or the fourth official on the side. So they can combat it at the top to change the culture at the bottom. I think you could argue as well. But it's something that I'll link below in the description for people just to have a look at what we mean by sanctions and guidelines. But yeah, next season will be interesting with the way that they're going to manage it. Because what could you imagine in the Premier Division next year if the way that a team wins it is because of a points deduction? Let's say there's a fight at a game and the week before,
that would be insane, especially with the new, obviously with like we said about the committee are definitely looking at making, like you said with the Thames Valley, a step 6 ladder for this league. So obviously we have the possibility, I think it will be discussed a bit more this evening at the AGM, but we possibly could be a feeder league ourselves. And if you have teams that could win because of a points deduction and go up for a feeder, there will be some controversy at the end of next season, I can tell you that. So,
and I mean, the East Berks League is largely, I feel like it's a well-natured league. I haven't come across many people that have shown that type of ability in them. Actually, all of my instances of gross misconduct have been on Sunday football rather than on Saturdays. We had an incident in our very first year where one of our players was headbutted on the far side of the pitch. He was substituted and the referees forced him to go off the nearest exit instead of coming over to our side where I was on the sidelines. The referees forced him to go through the away team who had brought a bunch of louts with them, and their managers just headbutted him on his way back to us. But apart from that, I've not really come across it. You get a lot of passion in the East Berks League, and it's a little bit more. It's a lot of Wild West in terms of the way that teams conduct themselves, because there's never been too much of a formal umbrella on how teams need to act. So teams have kind of taken it upon themselves to act in the manner that they best see fit, how they can influence the league rather than how the league can influence the greater teams in it. So hopefully the new committee will put a stamp down on that, and hopefully in the next few years the East Berks League, for reference, the East Berks League is actually growing for next season. They were up maybe 17, 18 teams last season, and they're going to be growing to 30. And I believe with the plans that Darren and Rob Stevens, who have done, in my opinion, a fantastic job. They've done such a good job.
Hats off to both of them. They've done brilliantly.
Honestly, they've done a great job at getting in interest. I attended a meeting where it was more like a showcase evening where they were talking about their plans for the future, and the room was packed with teams. They were talking about their vision. They were very well organised. They were to the point about what they wanted, and it was all centred around growing grassroots football. And I was loving it. I was sat in the corner. I admired it. They're bringing on Dan Birchmore, who was the old secretary at Ascot United, who has a very firm voice, very, very good addition. They're changing over the referee secretary to have a programme about younger referees joining the league as a part of a mentorship scheme, which is, again, fantastic. And hopefully these changes can come in sooner rather than later, so that we can fill up with new, fresh faces in the referees. And just one final point about the EBFL, and it's kind of like about the referees, but I don't mean to give them a stigma here. But where do you think the EBFL's gone wrong? Where do you think clubs point to the league and say, this isn't what I signed up for?
What, in the terms of in referees, or are we meaning just
in
like...
terms of general, because obviously nobody's perfect, and what I would like to do is have some type of constructive talk with the EBFL about this is how clubs view the league in terms of what they don't do right. We've obviously talked about what they're doing right now. But for example, one big when I attended the meeting that the EBFL had, there were a lot of previous clubs there, and what they said was that they didn't like the referees. They went into some detail about what was going wrong with the referees in terms of their mentorship and their decisions, and the fact that there was no accountability. The referee secretary wasn't keeping a lid on them, so it was becoming very rogue. And another instance was the fact that they didn't feel heard at the time. So where do you think the league can improve? There's more.
Well, in the terms of being heard and communication, we've touched on it already, especially the last 18 months, 12 to 18 months, there's been a big change. And that's what something I felt has definitely made an impact. Like I said, I know a lot of the committee now, they make themselves well more known. They're at a lot more games. They're very active on the WhatsApp, the Twitter, the social media aspect of things. So that point definitely has changed for any former teams that are looking into this and listening to this today. But in regards to referees, that it's an issue that will come with every league, not just the East Berks. I think, unfortunately for East Berks, they fall into that category because it is grassroots football. They're not going to get the best of the best referees. You're not going to... And the thing is with referees is there's no balance between it, because you could have the worst referee possible, and it's listen, I've been a referee, I know how hard it is. It is a very tough job. You've got 22 players plus supporters on your back on a decision you make, but some referees are just too afraid to make a decision. They have no control over a game. The game is completely out of their control, and that's where a lot of teams look to blame the league for bringing referees in like that. But you either have those, or you have the top of the spectrum where the referees... I mean, I'll give you an example. Our last game of the season was against Frontline, and the referee we had, I'd never had before, but he actually told us after the game that he'd refereed Alexis Sanchez in a Chile versus Argentina game or something ridiculous. And he issued 9 yellow cards. He issued 9 yellow cards for time wasting, for like 2 fouls. So one of my players committed 1 foul. He got a warning. Second foul, he's booked. So you have literally like 9 yellow cards up here, or no fouls at all. There are some referees, and this is something that the league definitely need to remember. There are referees out there, and there are referees this year that I've had referee our boys, or I've gone to see, that are exceptional. They make a mistake, but they know how to get on from that mistake. They know how to dictate a game. They know how to control it, but they also know how to interact with both teams. And that's something that the all leagues, not just the East Berks League, all grassroots leagues have just got to look at. Referees are very difficult to get hold of nowadays because of the way that some teams abuse them, which I don't agree with at all. Listen, I hold my hands up. I've sometimes got on the back of a referee and stuff before, got myself into trouble for it. But referees, they all just need to be able to they've got to come and enjoy it. They've got to enjoy it more than just think about the money they're going to earn. That, it's a game of football. If you enjoy football, you're going to be entertained by a football game that you have a bit of control over, but you shouldn't let the control go to your head. You should enjoy the game and make the decisions that you think are right at the right time, and you stick by them. You don't ever get pressured by any other team. That's something you need thick skin to be able to make a decision and not be pressured into changing that decision, but also just to be able to take full control of a football game.
And finally, you have your referee badges. What conditions do you think that referees are looking for when they're going into leagues, and how can leagues like the East Berks League and the leagues in Reading and Bracknell on Sundays, how do they facilitate referees, from your opinion, better than what they've been doing now? Is there more that they can be doing to encourage referees, to keep them and to grow with them?
Yeah, so where I got to, I was at county level. So county level's a bit different. You know, referees are turning up an hour and a half before the game. You know, you're in a suit. But the thing is with referees for our league or any league going up is you've got to remember that we're all human. Everyone makes a mistake. You know, a player can make a mistake, a manager can make a mistake, a referee can make a mistake. Now, yes, in the moment you are passionate, and I'm one. You know, I'm one to talk. You can make an error of judgment. The referee can make an error of judgment, and you know it might cost your team a game, and it is very frustrating. The one thing is I think referees have just got to, especially like the level I was at, you just need to be able to continue. You need to be able to not let that decision destroy you. You can, at the end of the game, you can go and apologise. I mean, at the end of the day, I've always said, if I've made a mistake, I've always gone to the team at the end and I've said, listen, in that moment, I made that decision. Looking at it, I might have made a mistake. I'm sorry, but that's because I'm human. But that's something that I think referees have got to do. If you explain yourself, you're more likely to get a better reaction from a football team than you are by making a decision and then being in that, you know, control area. Oh, don't talk to me, don't talk to me. I've always thought if you talk with opposition or, you know, with both sets of teams and say, this is how I'm going to play the game out. If I make a decision and you want me to explain my decision, I'm happy to explain it. Just don't get on my back. And I think that's what Premier League is trying to do. Obviously, don't surround the referee. I think we definitely need to start doing that a bit more. Still this year, we had a lot of teams surrounding the referee and that puts a bit of pressure on them. But I think as a referee or as an official, just explaining it doesn't cost to explain how you've come to that decision. I think it gives teams a bit more understanding of how you've made that decision. Even if it is a mistake or a decision we don't agree with, we can go, okay, well, thank you for letting me know, rather than there's a penalty. Wait, have we got a penalty from that? And the referee just continues with the game and doesn't say anything. That's where I think we can make a step forward by having referees that want to be there, not just for the money, for the game, that can communicate with both teams, but can also accept the fact that if they make a mistake, they know how to get on with the game, but also explain where they've come from with that decision, I think.
I've made a recommendation to the Reading Sunday League in particular because they are really struggling with getting referees in. They have maybe 25 referees to cover 5 divisions, so they typically only are able to supply refs for the Premier Division 1 and Division 1 and some in Division 2. So anyone below basically the middle pack has to kind of fend for themselves. What I recommended was a response form after a game that I'm trying to get mandatory into the league, where basically I would like to do 2 things. Number 1, have managers and referees have like a post chat at the game to to get away, have a few minutes with your teams, and then afterwards, before the referee goes, you and the other manager have a nice little debrief where you kind of, if there's any frustrations, you let it go. Because largely the problem is in football, sometimes you take stuff home with you and you let it stew on you. So I think that maybe like a post, something in the centre circle, or like, you know, to calm everybody down, or to say, well done, referee, you had a good game, because there's never enough positive reinforcement with referees. So I made this note with the Sunday League and said, you need to basically start encouraging the referees more, because their one big feedback was that they never get any type of positive feedback. They only ever hear the negatives. It's like life, isn't it? When you're doing things really well, you never hear, you know, you're doing a great job in your line of work. You never hear your manager say, well done. It's always only exclusively whenever there's an issue. Such as, you had a bad, in a referee's case, you had a bad game. So what I have recommended is a response form where if the referee's had a good game, you send in a very quick online form. The Berks and Bucks FA do a very good form online where you just fill out a quick form saying team name, say Hype Train Sandhurst, and then you basically say thoughts on referee, or like there's some box where you can say what he did well so that he can then have positive feedback, because from my point of view, the referees never get enough feedback. So all they do is stick to their guns and they're never developing. So managers, we have to go through a development cycle where we have to constantly learn. Referees, from my point of view, feel like sometimes they have to stand, they're very, not jaded is the wrong word, they're very much insular, where they have to stand on their own 2 feet and have a very particular viewpoint. So maybe clubs messaging them a feedback form through the league saying he had a fantastic game, he made some really good calls, would actually benefit the constructive development of referees as well, as part of like a mentorship for them. That's kind of what I would like to see going forward, to interact with referees more. Even if it's through a middleman of the league. And I'm going to mention the same thing to the East Berks League as well, especially as they're doing their mentorship program. But I feel like the one thing, I speak to a lot of referees, and I have a lot of good relationships with referees where, like, there's one referee, Samuel Palmer, who's been nominated for Referee of the Year at the Berks and Bucks FA. He is a fantastic young referee. And when I spoke to him, he said he doesn't really ever hear anything from teams. So he's never really knows if he does a good job or not. But he has done such a good job, and teams need to relay this to the leagues more, especially because referees get promoted up through the steps. They need to have this feedback go through them, not just leave it to the clubs. I would like it to be mandatory, where clubs have to say the reasons why constructively if a ref's had a good or a bad game or an indifferent game, because you're never going to really find the root of the problem that teams have. And after a while, I think that teams will get into the habit of saying, do you know what, he actually had a good game, I've had to think about it.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I would do. And then the referees might come out of their shell a little bit more. They're more willing to go to the clubhouse after a game, or speak to you before a game. Because on Sunday League, Jesus Christ, everyone's got a stick up their bum, where they turn up to a game and think that teams are out to get them. And they never are, but they come in with that mentality where they feel like they're under pressure before they even kick the ball. And you don't want to feel like that going to your job. Imagine going to a job on a Monday morning feeling like you're being watched in a negative way. Nobody thrives in that environment. Hopefully football can comply with the referees. And apart from that, Jordan, we've been going on now for nearly an hour and a half.
Time flies. It does. So.
It does. So I just want to say thank you for your time today. We've covered a lot.
No, thank you ever so much for having me on.
Yeah, and hopefully we can work together again in the future. And apart from that, I just want to say thank you, and I'll see you later this evening at the AGM, and hopefully see you next season, depending on the constitution for the East Berkshire League. But apart from that, thank you for everybody watching, and thank you for Jordan. And I don't know if you want to say anything before we leave.
No, just thank you very much for having me, and obviously it's always a pleasure chatting with a fellow managers. And as I say, hopefully we'll see you next season for another good game. So.
Of course, yeah. And thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Competitive game against Sandhurst, and on that day we won 4-0, whilst in the 2021-22 season, en route to winning the EBFL President's Cup that season, we doubled the score by winning 8-0 in the first round of the competition. So the leap that Jordan and his team have made has been something great to see as an outsider, and they were worthy winners, 5-1 on the day against us in a pre-season game on their home turf on 3G in August. I spoke to Jordan's dad, Darren, on the day, and he said that he's really proud of Jordan's work to overhaul and develop the team, working on all areas for fitness and conditioning to moving the ball with freedom and purpose. It's going to be really interesting to see how Sandhurst get on in the EBFL Premier Division next season. Just to round up the podcast today, I just want to again thank Jordan for his time. We had a really long, in-depth conversation about many areas of grassroots football and management. Hopefully, the people watching this will have a lot of good insight, especially about how a young manager conducts himself and operates himself. I really think Jordan's a good inspiration for younger managers looking to break into the game. He's got a lot of good knowledge about referees, about how to run football teams. He's got a lot of backing from his family, in particular in the Sandhurst area. And I thought it was a really good opportunity to speak with somebody that was young and vibrant and looking to change football for the better. On the next podcast, speaking of talking about making things better, I'm having James Mason on. James, if you don't know, is the social media secretary for the Reading and District Sunday League. James is out and about every single Sunday morning talking and filming bits for the social media accounts, and I'm really excited to sit down and talk all things social media and Sunday League with James. And until next time, as ever, believe the hype.